Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Apple Ruth's Ask Me Anything series. Tonight we'll be talking about what it means to be queer in college. Before we get to that, though, a quick introduction. My name is Callie Coffin-Friels. My pronouns are she, her, and I identify as queer. I'm a premium tutor at Apple Ruth, and I am also one of our Atlanta tutor managers. Apple Ruth specializes in helping students at all levels of their life gain academic success. So whether that looks like helping students with subject material at the elementary school, middle school, high school, college, or beyond level, we help with that. Whether it looks like helping high school students get ready for the rigorous college admissions process via helping them with their AP exams or the SAT and the ACT exams, we provide tutoring for that. We also provide tutoring for students looking to go to grad school with GRE, and we also help students just navigate the busyness of life, balancing school with work, with family, with fun, with everything, the organization via our executive function coaching. So at the end of the day, our motto is building better learners for life. And I'm excited to be with some of those better learners for life here today to talk about what it means to be queer in college. So happy Pride, everyone, last day of Pride. If we could go around real quick, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves. And to our viewers who are watching, we will be taking questions in real time. So whether you are in the webinar or watching us on Facebook, please feel free to send us some questions in the chat or in the comment section, and we will get to as many as we can in this hour that we have together. So if you all will go ahead and introduce yourselves real quick, tell the participants a little bit of who you are.
Awesome. Okay. Hey, y'all. I'm Cooper. My pronouns are he, him. I'm gay, and I am a rising fourth-year student at the University of Georgia, where I'm a marketing major with the International Business Co-major. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and yeah, I'm really glad to be here. So thank you.
Hey y'all, I'm Daniel. My pronouns are he, they. I am bi, but labels are overrated anyway. I go to the University of Georgia. I'm from Atlanta. I'm a double major in political science and international affairs with a minor in criminal justice. And I'm excited to talk to y'all.
Aloha, I'm Liko. I go by he, they pronouns. I'm a student at Brown University studying computer science and indigenous studies. And like everyone else, very glad to be here and talk story with y'all.
All right, fantastic. Well, I'm excited to get to hear some of your all's stories. So let's get to our first question for this evening. And it's totally fine if each and every person on the panel doesn't answer the question because there will be plenty of questions for us to get to. So I say all that to say, if you have an answer stirring within you, share it with us, but don't feel pressured and be like, oh my goodness, I have to provide something for every single question. All right, so first question is, when you were considering your options in terms of school, like where you wanted to go, what were some of the primary factors, like the big non-negotiables for you that the school had to have?
The first factor for me was not one that is talked about a ton, or one that probably needs to be talked about a little bit more in some cases, which is just flat out cost. Financial options were a very big deal for me when choosing where to go, which is why UGA worked out so well. Another one was also just being able to find community. I think one of the things that I encountered a lot of ideas about is a lot of people talking about wanting to look for a small college, a very closed community. And while those ideas are very appealing to me initially, and I still think are a wonderful thing, something about having a large group of people in order to almost kind of lose yourself in, to meet people and move on and find different groups to be close to over time, just continued coming up in my mind as something that I wanted to keep going to. And so with a low cost option and somewhere that I can academically succeed in a school big enough that I felt like my needs could be met, that's kind of where I started in my college search.
Yeah, to hop in on that, cost was a big one for me as well. and you kind of covered exactly like what my cognitive process was for that. But a big one was also school culture, because I'm a native Hawaiian, and I've coming to college, I was really worried about how I would, um, live my life in a predominantly white environment and white space. And so I was really worried about feeling ostracized, feeling displaced, feeling isolated. So I wanted to go to somewhere that I knew I could grow as a person and also feel part of the community. And I was very fortunate enough to get into a fly-in program and come to the East Coast so I can tour some colleges. And then when I found Brown, the college tour was amazing. The open curriculum was a huge bonus because I have a lot of different interests academically, from the environment to coding to poli-sci, and I can explore all that here at Brown University. And we're known to be a very progressive institution, and there are a lot of student groups on campus that do a lot of great activism work. And I just wanted to become part of that culture and really just get my feet in the ground here. So yeah, that's kind of just what I was thinking through during like that college search process.
Okay, so I guess to jump in, since both of y'all responded, for me, I would say, like you guys said, price was a big thing, and then I needed a bigger school with lots of different departments because I did not know what I wanted to major in. So I couldn't choose a school that was particularly strong in kind of one field because I didn't know what I wanted to study. So I needed like the flexibility to be there in case, like I changed my mind. And so UGA has a lot of like really good programs, and so that was like a big part of it for me, like knowing that if I change my mind, like I can still be in like a really good program, like for whatever I want to study. And then also like location to home, it's only like it's pretty close to where I'm from, but it feels like it's kind of far. So that's a nice balance because I can go back if I need to, but it also kind of feels like I'm very separated from like where I'm from and like my parents and stuff, which was nice.
Mm-hmm. I had a very similar college experience in terms of being just far enough away that I could go home if I needed to, but there was definitely the distance where it's like I can go be my own person now. I think that is essential to the college process because you all are growing and figuring out who you are as people and who you want to be in the world. It's interesting in your responses, all of you kind of indicated in some way that yes, affordability, that's a big thing and big conversation amongst high school students always when looking at college. But the other thing that you all hinted at was the culture, be it a big culture, a small culture, being able to get connected to different groups and whatnot. So as it pertains to all of us here on the call being somewhere in the alphabet soup that is our wonderfully diverse community, how have you found the culture of the school to impact your ability to live your full truth on campus?
I can jump in here. Honestly, I have just now started feeling comfortable enough to explore my queerness because I grew up in a very conservative environment and in a very conservative school. So I never felt comfortable enough to explore. And even at my first year in college, I still was like operating under a heteronormative mindset, which was very toxic for me. But I'm trying to take this this past year and this summer to really explore what it means to be in a community. And I'm thankfully in proximity to my campus this summer. And I realized that there's so much support systems here. There's so many allies and there's so many queer people too. So there's a constant reassurance from my peers here. And everyone is trying to figure out who they are and what they're doing, regardless of their identities. So we're all in the same position and everyone is supportive of that. So it's been a very empowering experience for me.
It's awesome.
Okay, so UGA has 40,000 students. And so I think just because of that, I mean, if you just do the math, like, I mean, chances are there's probably going to be like a lot of like queer people at Georgia. And so at first going into the college, I was a little nervous because, you know, I mean, we're in like the South, like this is Georgia still. I was like, I'm not really sure about this. Like, we'll have to find out and see. There's a lot of like very queer friendly spaces at UGA and a lot of queer people. I would say you do have to look for it. I'm not gonna lie, but I think once you find it, there's a lot more queer people than I thought were here. And there's a lot of like really great queer spaces in like the town as well as like on campus. And there's plenty of resources. And I've never, like, once I really started to look and once I felt comfortable going out there, like to search out those people and those spaces, since then, like I've never felt like I couldn't find one, and then I was like all by myself or like felt, you know, like really lonely. So there's a lot of like diversity here just because there's like so many people. And so I think one of the good parts about like a really big school is that there's gonna be like a crowd for all students if you just go out there and like try to find it. So that's been definitely a positive experience of being a student at the University of Georgia.
Yeah, and would you mind to elaborate on that just a little bit, Cooper, when you say like you're gonna have to look for it? Like what did it look like for you to go looking for that community?
Right. Okay, so when I got to college, I was closeted. So I didn't come out until my second year in school. And so obviously my first year, like I was not seeking out like those people or those spaces because it didn't really matter.
Sure.
It was, you know, like I was closeted. And then, well, also I went to like a Christian school before going to UGA. So I didn't know like queer people, like just period. Like I literally didn't know many queer people just from, you know, like where like I grew up and different things like that. And so when I came out, I started to seek out like friends that were queer, like, you know, some groups on campus that were queer, like spaces downtown that were queer, and different things like that. And so when I like made the decision like to seek that out, and when I made the decision that that was something that like I wanted and needed, I found like so many people that I didn't know were there on campus just because I wasn't looking for them, if that makes sense. So yeah, like there's definitely a lot of like great people at UGA that I just didn't know existed because I wasn't looking for them. And like I wasn't like putting myself in like to situations and like into spaces in which I could have met them. So once I started doing that, it was like a really great experience for me.
I had a little bit of a different experience with UGA. Just, you know, it is big school. I kind of got dragged into queer spaces originally. One of the first day I got there, someone brand new came up to me and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for other gay kids. Can you point me in the right direction?" And I was like, "Well, you found one," and you know, friendship hit it off from there. Really, I think for me, it's been very much sort of a personal experience. I'm really big on the concept of family and sort of choosing the people around you and making those connections. And you know, coming into, as Cooper was saying, you know, a Southern school, UGA's reputation is not as the progressive center of the world, although maybe we might get there. But just having those very personal connections with other people that you don't necessarily know, and once you've made one, once you've made two, once you've started that process of opening up, for me, it was, you know, almost like a train just kind of going down the tracks of, okay, this person knows this person, and, you know, let's get connected there. And this person might know one area that, you know, has a different feel, a different community to it. And so it was very much of a person by person experience for me.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that, being able to just make those connections, and it's almost like this beautiful web, right? You know, and it's like what's that theory that says that we all know everyone in the world, and we're only separated by at most 6 degrees of separation. So that like if, you know, I'm looking at Lico and we go like down the list of like 5 people that Lico knows, eventually we're going to get down to someone that I know, right? So that's really cool in terms of how you all have gone out and found that community and found that chosen family and kind of curated it around you. While we were talking about that, someone in our audience recommended taking a look at campuspride.org in terms of being able to find out information about specific universities, and also, of course, gleason.org would be a good thing to check out in terms of what resources are available in the area. So another thing to consider, I think, is also, the surrounding community. I know Daniel and Cooper both talked about how, well, Athens is in Georgia, right? But there are some places in Athens that are exciting to go to that you enjoy going to. So what are some of those places for you all around your campuses where not only you feel safe, but like you really enjoy going to? Like it's just like the hot spot to hang out.
I was a freshman last year, and some of the hotspots in Athens aren't necessarily great for translating into webinar format. But
That's fair.
For me, at least, there are freshman dorms, at least at Georgia. And once I kind of made a couple of those connections, it was less of a, this is a restaurant that does drag shows, although those are wonderful and you should totally go to them. And more of a, there's a room here that, you can go to and talk. There's also the LGBT Center at UGA, which is wonderful. They have free food, which is my favorite thing in the world, as well as, staff and other queer kids that just kind of hang out there. That's been wonderful. I think that for each, I saw the question earlier asking about different ways to find out about different campuses. It kind of ties into this, I think, which is one of the thoughts I had was just ask. It's very much a different thing for different campuses, but if you search, queer at Harvard, queer at Brown, queer at, CSU Fullerton, it probably won't take long to find an email or a phone number or some method of communication to reach out and find, whatever those spaces might be. Also the grid. It's full of vegans and gay people if you're in Athens. And it's not a hard and fast rule, but just a recommendation.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm honestly still trying to find those spaces. And I think that I want to instill on anyone who's listening potentially that it's okay not to have those spaces found yet. And like through college, you're going to keep finding those spaces and meeting those people that will create those safe spaces for you. My freshman year, I spent most of it studying and doing clubs. So I had most of my time was productive and I didn't take a lot of time for myself, which is why I took a gap year this past year during the pandemic so that I could come back to myself and assess what I need and where I want to go and how I want to carry myself, because I recognize that I didn't know where those spaces were for me. But I'm starting to find those now. And kind of like what Daniel was saying, it's by a person basis. You meet someone and you're like, oh, wow, this person's cool. We should catch up or just talk more. If you're doing your college search, like Daniel said, just look up if your campus has an LGBTQ plus center, or go through Instagram. Instagram has been very helpful for me to finding resources and workshops. Usually you can just sign up for a workshop. They don't require you, at least for Brown, they don't require you to have like a Brown email or be a student. They just like, this workshop's open to the community. And that's a great way to learn about what's happening on campus and also just explore what's happening just like around college campuses around the country. And I wish that I knew that was a resource that was available, because I definitely didn't know until coming to campus and getting involved on social media and seeing these posts from these different student organizations. So yeah, I would just suggest finding those spaces online while you're doing your college search. And then if you are able to do a campus tour, just asking about what organizations do exist on campus, that what identity organizations exist, so that you can get connected early on.
And I think that is such an important facet here, just like being able to utilize the technology that we have. Not to sound like that old fogey, but back in my day, like Facebook had only just gotten started. So our ability to look at what really was going on at college universities from a student perspective was very, very limited. So that is, as many issues as social media has, this is one of the highlights of it. I think that students who are curious about what just day-to-day life is like at a school can go figure that out just by looking on Instagram or Snapchat or what have you, whatever the kids are into these days. So speaking of just like day-to-day life, let's get into that a little bit. So what does a typical Wednesday look like for you at school? I know like right now that might not be the best time, but like last semester, what did a typical Wednesday look like?
Wednesday was my off day. So it looked great. I did dual enrollment in high school my senior year at Georgia State, and something that I found out about myself is that I'm very much a work or a sleep and socialized person, and so I started scheduling all my classes on Tuesday, Thursday. And when I got to college, I didn't have quite that opportunity, but I wanted to build in a little break for myself in the middle of the week. So Wednesday was my sleep in until 12, do absolutely nothing, and talk to, eventually you have to do some homework, but try and, socialize for a good day.
I mean, it's good to know yourself that well, to say like, I need this day in order to succeed just as like a human and be able to take care of myself, but also succeed as a student. That's an awesome level of self-awareness.
Okay, so I'm trying to think because school got a little wonky when COVID came, so it's been a bit different. But I'll just speak in like pre-COVID life because that's probably what we're getting back to, thankfully. But a typical Wednesday at the University of Georgia. So obviously, you would go to your classes. So classes are shorter on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which is nice. They're only 50 minutes instead of like the whole entire long, like 90-minute period. I think they sometimes are. So for me personally, I'm like a business student, so I would take like my marketing classes towards my major. And then there's always a lot going on campus at UGA, so it's really fun like just to walk through campus and see like all of the different like groups that are there or like clubs. And I don't know if you got really like to experience that, Daniel, just because of like COVID and stuff, but I promise like when you go back like in the fall and it's like a post-COVID world somewhat, campus will like look sort of like normal. But yeah, so you just walk through campus and a bunch of clubs are trying to get students to join. And for all of our viewers, my recommendation is literally like join as many things as you can when you get there. And then if you don't like it, like, I mean, just quit. I mean, like, what are they going to do? Like, you know what I'm saying? And so when I got to college, I joined like a bunch of different clubs and then I quit, like probably most of them that I didn't really like. And then I kind of found, like one or two to stick with. And so that was like really useful for me, like to meet people and, like to do things just that weren't just my classes. So being on campus is a really fun experience. And then I guess, well, I lived off campus last year. So I guess once you go back, it's kind of just schoolwork, like dinner, and seeing if like my friends want to do something. So I guess that would be like a typical Wednesday for me.
I'm trying to think back to freshman year, which was a year and a half ago now, which is weird to think about. But that year I was the class president for our social branch of student government. And because of that, I was very busy all the time. And I was also doing this thing called Safe Walk, which is basically a like student-led security team. We walk at night times to make sure that to increase campus safety, but also just to get people from like the libraries back to their dorms safely late at night. So Wednesdays, I think, was my shift, and it was like 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. So it was terrible for my sleep. Wednesdays, I also had meetings with some administrators, which was taxing. And then I also had classes on top of that. So kind of circling back to what I was talking about earlier, I didn't have a great balance my freshman year. And I didn't have that self-awareness to evaluate that as well. So my suggestion for y'all as you go into college and are thinking about college, just make sure to understand your capacity. I definitely did not and always overextended myself and try to make sure I was giving my all to everyone else besides myself, which was very toxic. And I think a lot of people fall into that pit. But yeah, just be cognizant of what your body's telling you. I started getting sick very often my freshman year because I was constantly overexerting myself. So yeah, I think just understanding your capacity is a great thing to just practice.
I think that's a good word. And honestly, that makes me really curious to hear from Daniel and Cooper, like if you could go back and tell, last semester senior you some advice as you were getting ready for college, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself, don't say no to trying new things like your first year, because like I said before, like if you don't like something, you can just quit. I mean, like what are they gonna do to you? Like literally nothing. So that yeah, I would just say, just because you don't know someone there, or because you don't know people like doing it, or you might not know what it is, like just say yes to like the opportunity and try it once. And worst case, you don't like it and then you quit and then you don't go back. And then best case, like you get to make some friends. Because I think that's what freshman year is all about.
I would send a little time capsule telling past Daniel to slow down a little bit. Because at least for me, I kind of, whenever I get stressed out, I get infinitely worse at doing all the things that I want to do. So in the time that I've taken up, like watching the clouds go by, or taking an hour to go down to Lake Herrick at UGA and just look at the stars with a friend, not only has it been really great, but my GPA has gotten like way better, which I mean, I'll take it. So I would definitely say slow down a little bit and, stop and smell the roses and, just like have a good time. It's going to be okay.
And you all are so much more self-aware than I was at your age. Just that level of, finding balance, getting the work done, but also working on you and taking care of yourself and taking time to watch the clouds go by and rest. That's such an important word, I think, for any of our viewers, because I mean, you know how crazy high school is, yes, with 80 bajillion APs all the time and having to balance all the classes and all the extracurriculars and whatnot. I definitely think rest gets lost in the mix sometimes. That's really cool that like you all get to share that wisdom now with these current high school students. So in terms of, campus life, right? Like, let's get real for a second. How is the food at the cafeterias where y'all are at? Like, is the food on campus good? Or like, do you just religiously eat out? Like, let's get real here.
So UGA has like a plethora of dining halls. I do not know why they felt that they needed to build that many, but we have 5 dining halls.
Wow.
And one of which is 2 stories. So yeah, it's just a lot of food going on over here at UGA. They were really good. Most of them were really good pre-COVID, and then when COVID hit, they like changed like procedures and stuff to make it like friendly, like to take out. And so a lot of like the items on the menu and stuff like were taken off. So I can only speak about pre-COVID, but they were good. During COVID, took a little bit of a hit. But I don't even know if I'm going to get a meal plan next year, but I'm sure they'll come back strong.
Yeah, coming from Hawaii and then going to a college campus is so different because the food in Hawaii is amazing, especially like we have a lot of like syncretic like we have a very like mixed plate of ethnicities and different cultures in the islands, and because of that our food is very good. And coming to the East Coast was a huge culture shock for me, especially for the food. Honestly, food isn't too bad, but they have days of like poke days, and then I would try to like, this is not poke, y'all are just lying to yourselves. And they'd have pho, but it's like not actual pho, it's just like noodles and like a soup broth. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. Like it's palpable. It's palpable. I'm enjoying being able to cook for myself though.
It's palpable. That says a lot.
I'll I defer to Cooper a lot on the UGA field just because I was here during COVID. The start was rough, not gonna lie, but it got better as the year went on. I also am very excited to have a stove next year and being able to prepare some of my own meals. Although I think I'll keep like a commuter meal. UGA has a couple different meal options, one of which is for commuting to school. So you get one meal a day, 5 days a week. And I think I hope that's going to work with my schedule just to not have to worry about lunch. But food's not too bad. I will give one word of warning though. If you do eat the same thing day in, day out, your body will not enjoy that process. And you'll have about a month of grace period of being able to eat the same like 4 meals, but not a great idea long term. So be careful.
Yes, I remember at my school we had a chicken patty Friday every Friday, and that got really old very quickly. But like some people were just like, if you didn't get their chicken patties, like their week was ruined. Um, um, but anyways, well, cool. So I think um, as we think about what it might look like to begin wrapping up this conversation, I want to end with one kind of overarching question. And you can go as superficial with this as you like, as deep as you like, or anywhere in between, or completely left field. But if you were president of your institution for a day, what would you change and why?
UGA has a massive endowment. We are spending that thing. I'm talking lowering tuition, having more programs for students who don't have access to huge amounts of financial resources. Something has got to be done about a couple of issues that start with a F and ends with a fraternity life, although I am not a super big expert on what that would mean. But I definitely think I love the opportunity that I've had at UGA, particularly with my financial situation. And the Zell Miller Hope program in Georgia has made college affordable for me, but for a lot of other students, that just isn't the case. And I think that if your school's endowment ends with the word billion on it, there should not be a large conglomerate of students who are having financial difficulties doing things like paying for classes, who are able to pay tuition, but have financial difficulties when it comes to things like meal plans, rent options, expensive textbooks, student health care. And I think all of those things are, very important. So I'm very happy with, the experience that I've had. But I think that there are too many students left by the wayside, in particular with healthcare.
I would probably do a lot of similar things. A huge issue with Brown is when we don't pay a lot in taxes for like the land that we exist on. So I'd want to be giving back to the community in very tangible ways financially, especially to education, like the education sector, but also just trying to build a better relationship with the community, because outside of the Brown bubble, we're not very liked, which is a huge issue. And Brown has different initiatives and different task forces, but don't really do a lot with those. So yeah, just kind of making sure that we're building better relationships with the community, finding tangible ways to uplift the community, and then also just for students, providing more financial aid, making sure that we go SAT optional, because that's actually one of my close friends. She led in a campaign to make the university go SAT optional permanently, just beyond the pandemic. So I'd want that to become the norm here. And yeah, there's so many different issues, but I feel like those are like the main ones.
So I guess Daniel already spoke kind of for UGA, but this is going to be superficial. But the thing I would do is add more parking, because please, I have to get to campus. I need a parking space. Like literally, please, Jared Moorhead, if you are somehow watching this, give me a parking space. Um, yeah, I mean, going off what the other said, I would definitely engage more with like the Athens community, because I think they have like a really rich and diverse community that I wish we engaged more with. Um, but all in all, though, I would say that UGA has a really strong network of graduates. So I've really enjoyed like being able to use that like to find like jobs and different things like that. So UGA has a lot to fix for sure, but I'm very appreciative of like the alumni network that we have, because they really want to like tap into students, and they really want us to graduate with like great jobs and things like that. So that's definitely been like one pro of being at like a really big school.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the one thing that I've found helpful in terms of like navigating like seasons of change, right, is the reality that multiple things can be true at the same time. It's like our schools can be doing good things, and there are things that they can be doing better. So I think that that's an important thing to keep in balance. So we actually did get some questions in the chat from our audience. So I want to take a minute or two to get those in, since they came in live. So the first question is about just the pros and cons of living on campus versus living off campus. They said, any suggestions for living on or off campus? I know most college campuses are pretty friendly to queer students, but is off campus safe too? So I'd love to hear your all's thoughts. I know that that's potentially skewed a little bit because of COVID in some instances, right?
Okay, yeah, so I've lived on and off campus as queer. So I can kind of speak to that. So, okay, on campus pros are, you're going to be forced to meet a lot of people because you all just get thrown into one giant dorm building. So if you're looking to meet people and if you're really outgoing, definitely choose one of like the bigger dorms, because you will have no choice but to make a bunch of new friends and meet a lot of new people. Cons are, you can't control who your neighbors are. If you go random for roommate, you cannot control that. And so being like a queer person in like a space that you cannot control, like who your neighbors are going to be, who's going to be on your floor, because at UGA for like the big dorms, they will separate like the halls like by gender. So it was like all guys like on mine for my freshman year, and so you just like can't control like who they're going to be, so you don't really know. So that's like a con, I would say, of on-campus living. But despite all of that, I would still recommend it for your freshman year, because it's a great way to meet people. And if you're off campus, you're just going to be like really detached from all that's going on campus. And especially as like a first year student, you don't want to be like all by yourself, because you need to like meet people to make college fun. And then as far as off campus, I would say pros are, you can choose your roommates. Because the way they do it at Georgia is like you're on campus for your first year, and then you pretty much will go off for like your second, third, and fourth year. So by then, like you're gonna know like who you want to live with, so you can choose them. And depending on where you live, it's not a super bad commute in Athens. And then I guess cons of off campus is you don't have a dining hall that's like built into your dorm. So
That was very expansive and thorough. I don't know if I can do the same thing for Brown, but yeah, you have to live on campus for the first year, and I think now the second year as well, unless you get off-campus permission. Very much agree with Cooper about the pros of living on campus. It's a great way to immerse yourself in the school's culture and meet as many people as you can. It's okay if you're also not outgoing. I definitely am very introverted, though I love being in social settings and talking with people, but there's always a point where you can just retreat back to your home base. But yeah, if you go random for your roommate, then that can potentially make things hard, but you'll always find a way to make living situations work. And if not, then you can always like submit like an email to like Campus Life or something to say like, this isn't working out, I need to go live somewhere else. So you're never just locked into one space either.
Right.
Unless if you're off campus and then you have a lease, then you are a bit more tied down, but you can potentially sublet your room if you're not feeling the people that you were moved in with. Specifically for being queer, I think living off campus has so many merits because you can choose who you're living with, and also just have like a very in-depth relationship with those people. And you can still be connected to campus. So like at Brown, I'm like 3 blocks down from like North Campus. So I'm still very connected, and like I skate. So it takes like 2 minutes to skate to campus from here. So yeah, there's always, like, at least for Brown, the proximity isn't an issue at all. And yeah, basically everything that Cooper said translates to Brown as well.
Awesome. And yeah, there's so much to balance there. And one thing that you mentioned, Liko, is about like reaching out to residents' life and if there is an issue, right? In most dorms, in most universities, every dorm, or at least every hall or something, there's a certain number of resident assistants, RAs, that are students who are assigned to basically help your transition into that dorm life. So if you have an issue, talk to your RA, and they can get you connected to the appropriate people and figure out a resolution that makes sense. Maybe that means looking like getting a different roommate, or choosing to live on your own in the dorm, or there could be multiple solutions to get worked out, but it's really about just seeking those answers and whatnot. Connected to the roommate question, someone also asked about the challenges, potential like pros or cons of rooming with someone who's part of the LGBTQ community or not. I'd be curious to hear y'all's thoughts on that, because I think there could be a lot of things that could be good and or bad, or a mixture with all that good stuff.
I think it's very situation dependent. And at least for me, a little bit more about the person rather that you're thinking about, either rooming with, if you do have that choice. If you're going in as a random freshman and have the option to, say random roommate, but ask that they be a part of the queer community, I think that's wonderful. But as far as it's just like, for example, if you are a white gay dude in Georgia, at least in my experience, you're not going to have that many problems. And so taking like a random roommate isn't the same decision if you're like a black trans guy trying to go to school. And those things have different connotations based on school, based on community. It's a definite plus because you don't have to be friends with your roommate, especially freshman year if you take a random one. But having someone that has some prior experience, if you want to, rant a little bit or vent out, some of the things that are going on in your life, I think is a great place of common ground to start with.
To kind of go off of that a bit, yeah, your roommate doesn't have to be your support network too. Like, I feel like you can definitely find different support networks. While you definitely should want to feel safe in the place that you're sleeping and everything, kind of tying back to what I was discussing earlier, if there are any issues that come up, you do have those RAs or resident assistants to like help work through those issues. From my experience, I wasn't able to connect to my roommates over being queer. And I don't know, for me, it wasn't like a big point of contention, which is, I think, a privilege that I had during that time. But definitely there are people who don't feel comfortable in spaces where they can't fully express themselves. And if there is a point of conflict, then yeah, I think you should definitely try to make sure that you can find a living space that is better suitable for yourself. But yeah, I don't think that's something to be scared of, because there are different escape routes and there are different ways to support yourself. If you find yourself with a roommate that you're not vibing with, that's totally okay. It's only your freshman year. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to be your best friend.
Yeah, as far as roommates go, at least for your freshman year, I would say the most important thing is just like respect and just like being comfortable like in your own living space. So even if you're not best friends, like the other said, you just like need like to respect each other and just like be comfortable like where you're living, and that's really like all that matters. It's not that serious if like you're not great friends. But as far, yeah, I mean, I feel like it doesn't, like if you really want to room with a queer person, you can definitely do that. And I mean, I'm sure, you know, like all colleges provide like plenty of resources like to meet people that, you know, like you could room with before you go, like if you don't know the other students that are going to the same school as you. And so those are definitely questions like that are commonly asked by students when they're looking for roommates. So if that's something that like you want, like you can definitely get that. But just like with all roommates, it just matters, you know, like are they, you know, like going to accept you, you know, like are they someone that like you feel comfortable talking to, regardless of like if they're queer or not. I think those are the things that really matter. Like all of my roommates are straight. The first person I came out to like was like my straight roommate. So it doesn't, yeah, so like it's great if they're queer, but it really just matters like, are you comfortable with this person, and are they someone that like you want to live with. But going off what I said before, like if you do want to live with someone that's queer and like you're worried about, you know, like trying to do that, like that is definitely something that you can do, because all schools provide, you know, like a plethora of resources, so you can
Mhm.
talk to a bunch of students that are looking for roommates.
Yeah, and when you all were going through that application process, did you have to fill out a survey about like your living habits in terms of like, I'm a morning person, I'm a night owl, and like stuff like that? Okay, yeah, I've seen a lot of nodding heads. So for those of you in the audience, like you will likely have to fill out a survey where you reveal a little bit about yourself and like your daily habits and whatnot. So like if you are one of those people who loves to get up at 5 in the morning to go for a run before you get your day started, they won't room you with someone who likes to stay up until 2 a.m. blaring music, right? So like there will even if you go like the random roommate route, there will still be some thought put into who they match you with.
I actually told the school I wasn't going to fill out the survey because I just wanted to roll the dice, and it was one of the oddest living situations for 2 semesters. Long story, different roommates, but one of them, you know, my roommate we would take shifts in the room because one of my roommates was nocturnal. They would wake up at around 11 at night and go to bed when I woke up in the morning. But despite that maybe being, and I love this person, by the way, they're great. But despite that being, you know, definitely not what I expected when I came to college, it really worked out to be just fine. You know, at the end of the day, you're going to be living with this person, and odds are you can find ways to, you know, work out the differences no matter how, you know, night and day they may be.
And I love how that's normally an expression and you used it literally there. I see what you did there. Awesome. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your experience with us tonight. This has been super insightful. I've learned a whole lot in terms of just like what it looks like to be on college campuses right now, COVID or not, because I'm a little bit farther removed from that season of my life than I would care to admit on this call. So before we sign off, a couple of announcements. If you enjoyed this event tonight, we have other events that are like it. We have a whole series of Ask Me Anything webinars coming up. The next one is Ask Me Anything Selective Colleges, and that will be on July 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And the next Ask Me Anything after that will be about first generation college students, which will be a really exciting conversation. And that will be on July 14th, also 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And last but certainly not least, if you're in that process of gearing up for your ACTs and SATs right now and hope to be sitting at a college of your choice like these fine humans right here are tonight, we are in the final hours of our biggest sale of the year. For every 10 hours of test prep you purchase, you get 2 free. So go to appleruth.com to purchase some of those hours there, because that sale ends tonight at midnight Eastern Time. But awesome. Thank you again to our fantastic panelists. You have been fantastic this evening, and I wish everyone a fantastic evening.